Hey, what's going on everyone? I'm Brian Taylor and today I'm doing a video with you on how to get free fruit trees from root suckers. It's a propagation method that we're going to be talking about, and hopefully it can help you guys get some free fruit trees. And I promise you, if you stick with it, this video, it won't suck. Thanks. All right, so right here I'm next to one of these jujube suckers. Now, what is a sucker, you might ask? A sucker is a plant that grows up through a current tree's root system. And this is actually something that trees do in order to ensure their own survival. They will spread their roots out far, and then if there's any stress or anything comes upon that tree, it might shoot up a sucker in order to ensure its own survival. Now, if a tree loses some limbs from wind, if there's a fire, if somebody is, cutting into it just to stress it a little bit, there's a huge possibility that suckers can come up. Not every type of fruit tree does this, not every type of tree does this, but there are a good amount that do. So, this is just one of many ways that you can get fruit trees. So the most common that you probably think of is if you get your fruit and you get the seed out of that fruit, kind of squishy, and you plant it. Now, this is probably the one way that everybody thinks you can get it, but there are so many different ways to propagate your fruit trees. You can graft them, you can air layer them, you can take cuttings and you can try to root the cuttings just straight from the tree. But this is probably one of the most overlooked methods of propagation, and it's probably one of the easiest to do as well. So I'm gonna show you guys how, and then we're gonna talk about what you're actually gonna get when you get one of these trees. All right, so one of the best ways to identify it is, if you're not familiar with what these trees look like, is if they still have their leaves on them. Now, it's fall right now, it's actually Halloween, and a lot of the trees are losing their leaves, but you can still come and take a leaf off and compare it to a leaf off of the mother tree and see that they are in fact the same. So that is one thing. You can also, once you get better, you can just identify, like jujubes, some of them are very thorny and they have a contorted shape to them. So like this is very easy to identify that it's from a jujube tree. Now, I'm about 6 feet away from the mother tree, and it's good to try to get the root suckers that are a little bit further away, because then you know you're not going to get a giant chunk of root that you've got to cut off. So what I did was I cleared the area. Let me show you. All right, so if you can see, I cleared the area, the brush around this tree, and I'm going to try to get a little ways around it in order to get as much of the roots staying on. Now, it's important that you realize jujubes are sharp. It's already got me. They've got some sharp thorns. Not all trees are like this, but the idea is that you're cutting into the root system of the already established tree. Whew. So I'm trying to get around it because I want as much of those roots as I can get. Now, if you look here, you can see that this sucker actually hooks over, and there's 2 more suckers right next to it. So trying to get as much of these as you can. If you want, and I'm just going to show you this because there's so many of them, I'll show you what happens when you try to pull it out. You end up breaking the branch with little to no chance of this sucker actually happening. So That's what we're trying to avoid, and it's not gonna help us propagate. So like this one, I'd say I just helped the part get rid of a weed. But the two right next to it, they still have a good chance, if they're hooked to that root system. If I could get into the ground, it did rain today, but the ground has been pretty dang hard, especially if I'm trying to cut into the root system. So just be patient with me as I attempt to cut this guy out. I can kind of feel a little bit of popping. As I do this, which is what I wanted to feel. And I think I feel the larger section of root down there as well. I felt a little pop, and it was able to come up. So here we go. Whew. And that is what I was wanting to get. Large section of root that has multiple little offshoots coming off, and I'll be able to use this to propagate. It's starting to rain a little bit, but I'm gonna keep going. Nice. All right, so you might be asking yourself, okay, now what? Now that I've got these, what do I do? When I get home, I'm gonna show you guys how I'm gonna put them into pots and prepare them for the next step. But a couple things you should know, a lot of people don't know this, but the roots from a tree may not always give you the same fruit that you were eating off of that tree, because most of the good varieties of fruit that you eat are grafted onto root stocks that are good for your area. So these jujubes right here are probably not the same tree as the ones their canopy holds. And how that's done is by grafting. So with all of these trees that I've collected today, I'm gonna let them get established, and then I plan on trying to keep this orchard behind me alive by grafting each of the varieties onto one of these suckers. That'll be for another video, but if you were to let this grow, it would most likely grow into a different kind of fruit tree than the one you might have tasted off of the main tree, simply because most of these trees are grafted. I can't speak specifically for the trees behind me, but I do know that most varieties are generally grown from a graft. So that's what most of mine are gonna be. So I plan on keeping this orchard behind me alive. I'm gonna try to do at least 2 trees for every variety that's remaining, just so that we can keep it alive. And then I'll use this, I'll get cuttings offline for more common varieties of jujubes, and I'll keep establishing and growing my jujube collection as well. So that's the step for now. I'm gonna basically show you guys what we're gonna do with this afterwards here in a sec. All right, so I'm back home, and I just got a regular 3-gallon pot that I had from some other trees that I'd gotten, and I had a pile of just kind of native soil that the chickens have been kind of working, so it's kind of soft and spread apart. There's nothing really special about it, it's just native soil. I want the tree to get used to growing in the native soil out here. I don't think jujubes are a variety that needs any special amendments or anything like that. They're very hardy, so I don't want to pamper it and give it something that it's not going to need in the future, and it will cost me money and time, and I'm not interested in that. So I took one of the medium-sized cutting or shoots that I got, and what I'm wanting to do now is I'm wanting to limit the competition so that it can put as much energy into reestablishing its own root system. And so this one has kind of 2 or 3 suckers, and I'm going to eliminate that down. I'm going to cut off a couple of them because I don't want these competing with the main branches. So they might still get some shoots coming up, and I'm going to try my best to keep them down. I'm not going to do it on this one, but on one of the bigger ones that I've got, I'm probably going to go through and snip the thorns off just so that it'll be easier to work with when it does come time to graft. So let me move the camera over here and I'll show you how I'm going to plant it. All right, so I've got it right here. Got my root system. I'm going to dig into my pot, kind of make a hole for this guy. I'm going to dig that in really well. Fill this in like that. Just so that it's established. And then I'm going to be right back and I'm going to fill up the top part so that the root system itself is covered. All right, so there's the first one. I'm gonna go ahead and do it with the rest of the ones that I harvested, and then we'll talk about future plants here in a second. Just let me get all of them done. Decent size jujubes now. This one's actually pretty dang big. I'll probably be just trimming the spines off of it so it'll be easier to work with, but that's not something you have to do. It's just something I'm wanting to do. So when I do get to the point in the spring when I decide to graft these, it'll be a little bit easier to work with. But that is a very simple way to get some free fruit trees. I highly recommend we take advantage of all the resources that we have. That makes life a lot easier. It cuts a lot of costs. Once you do have a tree like this though, just remember it's probably going to shoot up its own invasive roots and have its own suckers. So that could be a good thing if you're wanting to expand your collection, but it could also be more work because as you guys saw in the video, they weren't completely easy to remove. Just make sure that you're careful, wear some gloves. Probably would recommend some safety glasses now that I'm doing it, just because I got a couple close calls next to my eyes. My arms are a little scraped up, but overall, pretty easy experience. Hopefully you guys learned something. Please subscribe to the channel. We just hit 4,000 subscribers. We're super pumped about it. We want to keep growing. We want to keep doing this, and the best way we can do it is if we get your support. So until our next video, we'll see you around. Bye.